Can I retire at 55 with $600,000 saved for retirement? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. And I want you to hang on because I want to go through two specific scenarios for this couple. And I want you to see why it is so important that you make a really good calculation on one particular retirement data point. So hang on, because if you miss it, it could derail your entire retirement plan. You ready to get into this? Let's go. All right, so here we go. So I've got John and Karen King, and they live in the great state of Washington, or Washington as we say here in the South. John is 54 and Karen is 57. John's salary is $131,000 a year and Karen makes $27,000 a year. And we're going to retire next year. So 55 for John and 58 for Karen. So they're going to retire at the exact same time. Now, from a Social Security standpoint, we're looking at taking Social Security at 62. So for John, taking Social Security at 62, it would be $2,394. For Karen, taking it at 62, it would be $1,274. Now, keep in mind, claiming Social Security is a very important decision. And when you claim Social Security, it depends on your individual plan. You know, if you claim Social Security at 67, you're going to get 100% of your full retirement benefit. If you claim at 62, you're only going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. Now, you can start claiming anywhere between 62 and 70. If you wait till 70, you'll get 124% of your full retirement benefit. But you want to make a decision on Social Security based on your financial plan, on your retirement income. A lot of times I'll read articles and they'll say, hey, you only want to take Social Security at 67 or delay until 70. And I look at it and go, wait a sec. I've done thousands of financial plans. We call it a Your Financial EKG. I've done thousands of Your Financial EKGs. And what I have noticed amongst all of these plans is that claiming Social Security benefits are different for each individual plan. Whether you're married, you're single, you have partners, when you claim Social Security, it's based on your individual plan. You're going to see that here with John and Karen, which is why it's really important when we run your Financial EKG, we want to pick the most optimal time for you to claim Social Security benefits. Now, we do have a pension. So John has two pensions. He works in a union for an electrical union. So we have a pension at 55 of $31.17, and we have a pension at 60 of $1,000. Now, here's what I want you to notice, and hang on before you cut me off and say, oh, they got a pension, I'm not, this doesn't apply to me. You're going to want to hang on because that data point we talked to at the beginning, that applies to everybody. And if you don't get it right, it could kill, derail, destroy, wipe out, whatever you want to say, avalanche your retirement plan. Now, here's the thing too you want to notice on these pensions. Neither of them have COLA increases, and the one benefit down here does have 100% survivor benefit. So the larger pension has 100% survivor benefit, but the smaller one does not. So no COLAs, and one pension doesn't have survivor benefits, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, from an asset standpoint, I told you we've got right at $600,000, so $599,787,000. All right, so here we go. Let's look at the expenses. So we've got $5,935 in monthly expenses, and I want you to pay attention to this number right here. You see where it says average inflation rate? 2.71%. I want you to remember that. Average inflation rate, 2.71. So here we go. Here's some expenses broken out. We have baseline expenses of $3,917 with an inflation rate of 3.27. Now, baseline expenses are going to be your utilities, like your cable bill, your light bill, your streaming bill, water, anything that's not going to go away. Property taxes, property insurance, car insurance, you know, food, anything that's going to be with you in perpetuity. That's your baseline expenses. We also have a mortgage of $935. We have a travel budget of $1,000 per month. We have a life insurance policy of $83 a month. We have insurances or random insurances of $1,500 a month. This is medical. This is health insurance for him and for her. And then we have Medicare costs with a supplement that we've put in there as well. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Remember up here we said the average inflation rate of 2.71%. Okay, that's their personalized inflation rate. But you can see where baseline expenses, we have a 3.27% inflation rate. Well, what's the difference between those two numbers? Easy. This 3.27 is the 109-year average for inflation. This 2.71 is their personalized inflation rate. Now, look at the mortgage. $935 is the monthly mortgage. But there's no inflation on your mortgage, right? Like the mortgage payment's the mortgage payment. It's going to fall off in January of 2048. So we know this $935 is going to be $935 between now and the year 2048. So that already brings our inflation number down. Now the travel number, we're doing the same, 3.27% for inflation, $1,000. So $1,000 today for travel is different from $1,000 next year. Life insurance, $83 a month. There's no inflation on the life insurance. It's a term policy. It's going to end in the year 2034. It's $83 a month, $83 a month, $83 a month, no matter what month you're looking at between now and the year 2034. Now, there's two figures on here where inflation is probably a little too low, and so we need to project those as higher for the future. The first is going to be health insurance of $1,500 a month and the Medicare supplement. We're still running those at 3.27%, which again is the average inflation rate. Obviously, health insurance is going to end when they're 65, and then we go on Medicare for perpetuity, right? So you have your Medicare Part B premium of right now it's $170. It comes out of your Social Security check, and then they're going to do a supplement, which is a secondary insurance to go along with their Medicare. You can do a Medicare Advantage plan, or you can do a Medicare supplement. Okay, so those two things combined are going to give them their Medicare coverage. We're going to have Medicare A and B, and then the supplement. Okay, and then they'll have to have Part D as well in there for drug coverage. But anyway, I digress on all the Medicare talk because that's a whole nother video, all right? So we're going to use inflation on that. So the health insurance ends at 65 and the 450 starts in perpetuity. And again, we have inflation on that. So we have almost $6,000 of expenses and we have an average inflation rate of 2.71%. Now I want you to see this. If you go to Y charts, so this is Y charts, and you can just type in the average U.S. inflation rate, and you can get a really good idea of what the average inflation rate is for America at the time. Now, as we're at the time of this recording, we're at about 3.7%. Now, you can see back in the year 2022, we got up to 9.06. Now, obviously, if we're looking at this on a max scale, now this is just going back to 2018, you can see where 2.18% was inflation in 2018. 3.7 is where we're at today. You're going to have these peaks and valleys. Let's go back to the software real quick. Let me show you inflation history from 1914. So when we started calculating CPI back in 1914, you can see how inflation is going to adjust over time. I mean, 1916, we were at 12%, 1917, 18, 1918, 20. Obviously, we were going through World War I at that point. And then if you go to the 70s, right, we had those high inflation years, the Jimmy Carter years, oil embargo years, those kind of things. Look at this, 8, 12, 6, 6, 9, 13, 12. Then Volcker slams on the brakes in the 80s and we get back into the 3s and 4s. We have the 2008 crash right here. And so inflation gets basically brought to nothing because the Fed brings rates down to 0. And then we have COVID and we have inflation back to where it's at. And so inflation's going to ebb and flow. That's why we're going to use 3.27%. Now we can obviously, in the projections of this, and this is why I want to hang out here because this is what could derail your retirement. This is really important for you to understand. We can obviously adjust these expenses and we could say, well, what if we do an average inflation rate of 5% on our baseline expenses, and let's do that for 5 years. And then at the end of 5 years, let's go back down to the average inflation rate. So let's project out what I would call reverse sequence of return risk. Now, sequence of return risk is the risk that you go into retirement, your retirement assets, like your 401k, your IRA, your 403b, your Roth IRA, they go down in value because of a market collapse or market loss. So the market's going down and you're taking out income from your retirement assets, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm down 25%. That's sequence of return risk. Reverse sequence of return risk, what I like to call that, is purchasing power risk, meaning you go into retirement and that $1,000 you thought you were going to need is now $1,500. And so inflation eats away at your purchasing power. Doesn't matter what your market investments are going to do. They're going to ebb and flow, but your purchasing power at the beginning of your retirement gets eaten away. And so your projections for your retirement income are off because you've basically eaten up your retirement income with high inflation. That's why we got to have these good projections. So let's put this back at 3.27%. Okay, now $6,000. So let's go to retirement. Let's see what this looks like. So they're 55. Here's our pension kicking on, right? So pension, net monthly income, that's our tax money coming out, right? We got to pay taxes. Here's our expenses, $6,123. You can see that that's inflation. Let me show you what that looks like. Here we go. So we're working for part of the year, so we have a net positive, right? Because we're working. Boom, in May we retire. So the pension kicks on in March. In May we fully retired. And now we're having to take money out of our investments. So you can see in May, we got to take out $3,111. But in June, we got to take out $3,125. You see, that's inflation, just working its magic, right? I always say compound interest is God's greatest gift outside of Jesus, okay? That works on the positive in your 401k when you're adding money to it. Your IRA, you're making the contributions. You're investing. Compound interest, right? It also can work in reverse, and it's bad when it comes to inflation, right? Because if you go buy raspberries today at Costco, they're like $8. They were $5 3 years ago. That's inflation, okay? And then obviously we gotta have taxes. So here's our taxes, right? We gotta understand that we're gonna pay federal tax. They're in the state of Washington, they're gonna pay some state taxes. So we have to look at that when we're calculating in not only inflation, but our retirement income. Because if you take out $1,000 from your IRA, you're gonna have to take out really what, like $1,100, $1,200, depending on the state you live in. I'm in Florida, so there's no state income tax, but we might have to, I gotta take out 10, 20, 25% for federal. So you've really gotta understand what is my taxes gonna be, what are my expenses. So if you're looking at your expenses and saying, I need $5,000, do you really need $5,000 or do you need $5,500? That's what we want to calculate within the Your Financial EKG. We want to figure out how much do we actually have to have for our retirement income, right? Can I retire? And will my money last forever? That's what we're looking at. Now listen, if you want to get in touch with us, all the information's in the description below. And you can also go to our website. This is our website, Pearl Wealth Group. That is our firm. We've got a lot of great resources in here, but we also have a great download that you can get right here. Just click on this, get the download, come talk to us. Let's build you Your Financial EKG. Now, we look at their expenses. And we see that we have Social Security kicking on at 62 for Karen, and then we have Social Security kicking on at 62 for John. So what we're trying to do here is give a little bit of protection on their assets. You see we got $637,000 when they retire, but notice what happens. 632, 625, 593, 546, 506, 490, 486. We have this quick depreciation of our assets. Now we've got a great pension, we got Social Security kicking on, but we're still having to take out income from our retirement investments, and we're only projecting a 4% rate of return. I'm very, very conservative in our rate of return, especially in retirement. You know, the market's averaged 10% since 1950, it's 8% with inflation, but you and I know that we don't want to invest as risky as the market when we get into retirement, right? Like I don't want 600,000 to lose 120 because the market goes down 20%. Like we've got to be conservative. It becomes capital preservation, not capital appreciation when you retire. Yeah, we want to make money in retirement, but we want to hit singles and doubles. If we hit a home run every now and then, we high five, we chest bump, we're like, hey, that's great. But we want to be hitting singles and doubles. And so the reason we're taking Social Security early is because of this quick depreciation of our asset. So what you can notice is once John kicks on Social Security, what happens to their assets? They start to grow. We actually are cash positive for 1 year, and the money starts to grow. And essentially, let's look at 85 and 88. We've got 1.1 million and we got a $765,000 house. This is a really good scenario for them. But you're asking yourself, what could derail this? I'm glad you asked because I want to show you. When I first did this scenario with John and Karen, I want to go to that real quick. Let me pull up what we did. When I first went through this with John and Karen, we went to their expenses and they basically said to me, they said, hey, Drew, we have baseline expenses of $6,500 and we have a mortgage of $935. And that's all we did. And we put inflation on the baseline. And we put zero inflation on the mortgage, so our inflation rate was 2.86. But you see how our expenses are $7,435? Remember what they were on the other plan? About $6,000. So there's like $1,400 more in expenses here. Well, what happened? The first thing that happened was they were just kind of spitballing what their expenses were. And so what we did was I sent them a individual annual expense report where they went through their budget, their credit card statement, they put all of their expenses in so we could get a good calculation of exactly how much they're spending. We looked back a few months, we kind of calculated that in, and we came to a better number. Now, I'm not telling you I care what you spend your money on. Like if you go to Starbucks, that's great. Listen, I like Starbucks. They got good coffee. The Nitro Cold Brew, that's my favorite drink. Give me a splash of oat milk, I'm good there. But we've got to look at your expenses and say, okay, what are you actually spending your money on? What are the individualized inflation rates on that money? And are any of those expenses going to fall off? What we noticed for John and Karen is there were some expenses that are actually going to go away over the next 12 to 18 months. They just had a grandchild. Some of the money they spent for helping their daughter and her husband and just enjoying their new grandbaby, that's going to go away. Some of that expenses that they helped purchase some bigger items, that stuff's going to go away. There were some other expenses that will fall off once they retire that they were like, oh, we're not going to need those anymore. And so we were able to get a better idea of their expenses because we did a deep dive. I know budgeting sounds very Dave Ramsey and very boring, but it is so very important because it can kill, derail, avalanche, stampede, whatever word you want to use. Put some in the comment section, destroy your retirement. Let me show you what that looks like. We did this plan for them. Everything's still the same, right? Here's our pension. We didn't want to kick on Social Security right away, but look at this. We're out of money, 68 and 71. Why is that? Look at their expenses. Boom, 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 boom. And they're just out of money. They're out of luck. And when I was going through this with them, they were really disheartened. And they're like, what are we going to do? Like, Drew, what are we going to do? Let me show you this. Let's look at it together. Here's their current scenario. This is the one where we broke out the expenses, where we did the deep dive. Here's the one where we didn't break out expenses, where they were just kind of spitballing it. Look at the difference. 68 and 71, zero. At 100, they got 1.1 million. Let's look at this. Let's take them to 71 here. Let's look at it together. Look at this. At 68 and 71, current scenario, broken out expenses, we've got $620,000. Here, we're at zero. That's why it's so important to have a plan. That's why it's so important to break this out. That's why you need a financial EKG. That's why you need a comprehensive retirement income plan. Okay? I hope this has helped. I've enjoyed doing this with you. God bless. Bye-bye. Can I retire at 55 years old with $1.6 million saved for retirement? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I have a client, he's 53 years old. He's got $1.4 million saved for retirement. He lives in New Mexico, asking the question, if I retire in 2 years with a projected retirement savings of $1.6 million, is my money going to last forever? And what about taxes? Should I do Roth conversions? Should I be looking at other ways to save on taxes? And how should I invest going into retirement? That's what we're going to look at today on the channel. I've got 3 specific scenarios to go through with you today. One scenario is going to be just if I retire at 55, how long is my money going to last? The second scenario is going to be, let's look at doing those Roth conversions if all else stays equal. And number 3 is, let's look at Roth conversions if taxes go up. You ready? Let's get into the software right now. All right, so here's our 3 scenarios. Retire at 55, no Roth conversions, 5-year Roth conversion, taxes go up. That's going to be the last scenario we look at, and 5-year Roth conversion. So let's go to the first scenario, retire at 55. And here we go. We got Jerry. Jerry lives in New Mexico and he's 53 years old. Jerry's going to retire in February of 2024. Currently makes about $10,000 monthly, so that's about $120,000 is his annual salary. Now, Social Security, we've looked at a couple different scenarios, and I'll show you that here on the channel. But we're going to look at taking Social Security at 62. That actually elongates his retirement income the most. Now, remember with Social Security, you take it at 62, you get 70% of your full retirement benefit. You wait till 67, you're actually going to get 100% of your full retirement benefit. And if you take it at 70, if you're an overachiever, a broccoli eater, then you get 124% of your full retirement benefit. You can take it any time between 62 and 70. You got to make a decision that fits your retirement plan. For Jerry, when we've gone through the different scenarios, 62 makes the most sense. So we're going to start there. He's going to get 70% of his full retirement benefit. So from age 55 to 62, most of his retirement income is going to come from his retirement assets. And then Social Security is going to kick on. All right. So Social Security, 62. So let's look at assets. So here's what we've got in assets. So Jerry's got a non-qualified account with $475,000 in it. That's like a taxable brokerage account. He's got that at TD Ameritrade. He's got a SEP IRA of $205,000, which he's putting in $2,500 per month into his SEP IRA. He has an IRA with TD Ameritrade at $475,000. He has a Roth IRA, so he's already got a Roth with TD Ameritrade at $222,433, and he's got money in the bank of about $50,000. So, all in total, he's got about $1.4 million in assets. Now, from a tax classification standpoint, because this is what he's concerned about, 47% of his money is qualified, meaning pre-tax. So all money that's pre-tax is tax deferred. Tax deferred means you're going to pay taxes on this money at some point. If it's an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, or a TSP, you're going to pay a required minimum distribution at some time in your life, whether that's 73 or 75, depending on your age. So for Jerry, he's concerned about taxes. So can we get more of this red off the screen and get it over here to more green? So we have 15% Roth IRA. We want to try to increase the dark green on this screen. Now, from a risk standpoint, risk is also something that he's very concerned about. Well, currently, we've got all of his assets, so 96% of his assets are at risk of market loss. Now, there's different classes of investments inside of his retirement investing account. So AT&T stock doesn't carry the same risk as Tesla stock. But even in his risk allocation, all of the money is at risk of loss. Okay, so he's got 96% of that. So he's concerned. So what we normally do is we do a risk assessment. So what a risk assessment allows me to do is ask a few questions, and the program populates how much he should have at risk versus how much he should have safe or as conservative as possible. Okay, so what dollar amount would you like to keep in liquid accounts such as checking, savings, or money markets? For him, $50,000 is all he wants to keep in the bank, and that's a good round number for him. It's about 6 months of expenses, so he's good right there. How many years can you let your assets grow before having to take withdrawals? This helps us determine how long you might need to leave your money invested. So we know 2 years. He's 53 years old. We're going to go to 55. So 2 years, so 0 to 2 is the time horizon before he's going to have to start taking withdrawals off of this money. What statement best describes how you feel about savings and risk? I do not want to see my principal amount decrease. I cannot afford a significant loss. If my interest or rate of return stays ahead of inflation, I don't want exposure to risk. If I can make a moderate interest or rate of return on my investments, I can withstand some market fluctuations. So that's one we're going to go to a little bit more moderate because he's 55. And what would you consider a reasonable interest rate on your investments? I'm going to say 4 to 6. And the reason I like 4 to 6 is because the market's averaged 8% over the last 50 years. That's with inflation included. We're going to back up 2 percentage points to 6. And I'm going to show you in the software where we're really going to back up later in life. Okay, so hold on for that. And risk tolerance, which one of the possible outcomes on a 1-year investment indicates the amount of risk you would be comfortable taking. So best case, $102,000 or a $2,000 gain. Worst case, a loss of $0. Best case, you make $4,000. Worst case, you lose $4. Best case, you make $8, you lose $8. Best case, you make $12, you lose $12. Best case, you make $16, you lose $16. For him, again, we're still kind of moderate. So 10 to 12 is okay. So we're going to save and close that. So when we look at the risk classification for him, 58% of his money needs to be in this green area and 38% needs to be in this red area. So that's something we can work on as we go through the EKG, as we go down the line. This is not going to be a situation where that's going to determine how long his money is going to last. It's just a differentiate of where do we need to situate? Where do we need to set his retirement investments? And that needs to adjust as time goes on. The closer you get to 60, 70, 80, your investments need to adjust with your age, okay? Now, from a rate of return, we're going to look at a portfolio weight of 5.79%. That means the investments that are in the market are going to get a 5.79% overall rate of return. And I'm actually going to show you, we're going to go a little bit more conservative because Jerry's kind of a conservative guy. So before retirement, so for the next 2 years, we're going to project his investments earning 6% a year. After retirement, from 55 on, we're going to show a 4.4% rate of return. So we're actually going to go back farther on the conservative scale. And the reason for this is he's just a conservative guy. And so I don't want to plug in 6% the rest of his life if that's not what in actuality is going to happen. Because there's a big difference in 4% and 6% with compound interest. Remember, God's greatest gift outside of Jesus is compound interest. And so the longer your investments have in the market, the greater compound interest is going to work in your favor. So if we're compounding 6%, that's going to be a lot more money than if we're compounding 4%. So we have to project that out in the financial EKG. It can't be something, we just can't go, well, you know, you're always going to get 6 and you're good. No, it needs to be detailed because listen, you only want to retire once. Don't screw it up the first time. Okay. So we're going to save this. So now we're going to look at expenses. So his expenses are $4,000 per month. Okay, so $4,000 a month. You multiply that by 12, that's $48,000 a year. That's why we got $50,000 in the bank. We got 12 months of expenses. Boom, we're good to go. Okay? From a cash flow standpoint, Jerry understands he's going to need health insurance from ages 55 to 65. We're going to outline about $500 per month for that with inflation. So let's go in here and plug that in. $500 a month. We need to add some inflation. Let's put 1.5% inflation on there. So it's going to come out of his IRA at this point. Now we could also use his Freedom Fund. Actually, let's do that. Let's bump that up to his Freedom Fund. Insufficient funds. Actually, that's why we're using his IRA. We're using his IRA for this. We're going to use a 72T. We'll get into that a little bit later. All right. But that's going to pay for his health insurance. Now, taxes are where he's really concerned. So let's go to the year 2023. So his current taxes, or his current projected federal tax rate, is 13.96%. Okay, now projected state rate, 3.63 New Mexico. So if you look down here, his total federal tax is $12,568. That's why he's working. So we've got 2023. He's going to retire in 2024. See how it jumps down to 10? So we went from 13 now to 10 in 2024 because he's retiring in February of 2024. Let's go to 2025. So let's go a full year in retirement. Jumps up a little bit by 1% to 1.41%. So a projected federal rate of 11.41 is pretty good. But what happens in the year 2025? Taxes are going to change, right? So the current Trump tax code is in play until 2025. It either has to be renewed or it reverts back to the Obama era taxes. And I think if you ask any tax expert out there, whether it's your CPA, accountant, financial advisor, they'll tell you that taxes are going to go up. They have to go up because of our debt, our social programs, Medicare, Social Security, things like that. We've got to pay that down, you know? The bill comes due eventually and we've got to pay those down. And so we've got to look at this and say, okay, the software is plugging in 2025, but is there a way to adjust it to where we can look at taxes going up after 2025 And that's what we're going to look at, because what we're going to do here, and we're going to do this in the last scenario, we're going to do Roth conversions and taxes going up, but we're actually going to show taxes increasing, and we're going to do that in the year 2025. So we'll show taxes going up and how that's going to affect his overall plan. And then at the end of this video, I'll show you a nice little clip of how it all works together. Okay? Okay. So right now we're at 11.41. Now, pre-retirement, this is how much he's going to have saved for the next 2 years. So 53, 54, 55, we've got $1.6 million saved. So we've got his salary, we've got our contributions, monthly expenses, net monthly cash flow of $1,500, which is flowing into another brokerage account. We've got $1.68 million, and you can see that here. We've got $50,000 in the bank. His Freedom Fund, $535,000. And I didn't mention the Freedom Fund when we were going through assets. Freedom Fund, I call it a Freedom Fund. It's not a mutual fund. It's not an ETF. It's basically taking money and investing it into a taxable brokerage account. And what the Freedom Fund allows you to do is the freedom to retire when you want, or the freedom to pay off your house when you want, or the freedom to buy a car cash-free, a used car cash-free if you want. So he has taken money, and instead of putting it all into retirement accounts, he's put it into a taxable brokerage account. And that has grown over the years to $535,000. And so when he gets to 55, now we can use that Freedom Fund to fill the gap from 55 to 59 and a half. Now, Jerry's self-employed, so his other money is IRA. If he wants to use that for anything, retirement income, health insurance, which we're going to do, he has to do a 72T. He has to take out the money in equal payments, okay? Substantial equal periodic payments, that's a 72T, over 5 years or age 59 and a half, whichever's longer. So for him, from 55 to 60. He has to follow 3 strict guidelines that cannot be changed unless you're going from the amortization and the annuitization to the required minimum distribution. And you'd only do that if the market really crashed and you really wanted to bring down your set payments. But for him, we have this Freedom Fund, this bucket of money that we can use to really bridge the gap, have the freedom to use that until we get to 60. And we'll go through that. So let's go to retirement. So here we go. So he's 55. We've got a $500 cash flow. Okay, this is health insurance. This is monthly. We have net monthly expenses of $4,378. So that's his $4,000 a month with 3% inflation, right? Here we go. So our net monthly cash flow is $4,378. That's not a negative number in the sense he's losing money in the stock market. It's negative in the sense of that money's going for the light bill. It's going to a streaming service. That money's going to the grocery store, right? To Walmart. That money's going out so he can live. So we've got 1.693. And as you can see, we actually kind of stay right where we're at for, what is that, 4 years, from 55 to 58. So about, 3-4 years right there. And then we start to decrease in value. But what I want you to notice here, look at this. At age 55, he's got $508,000 in his Freedom Fund. Over the next few years, look at that, $467 at 56, $420 at 57, $369 at 58, $312 at 59, and $250 at 60. Boom. We're out of that. Can't take money out of your IRA under 59 and a half without a 10% penalty, without doing a 72T, without doing a Rule of 55, without having an emergency. We have done it with our Freedom Fund. If you're younger or if you've got a lot of cash in the bank, start building your Freedom Fund now. Invest in your 401k, get the match. Invest in the IRA if it helps you on your taxes. Invest in the Roth IRA to get tax-free money. But invest in a Freedom Fund. I'm telling you, it's going to give you the freedom to retire early. So if we look at this, we're out of money at 98 years old. So if you go down here, we're out of money at 98. That's really pretty good, right? We also have protected assets of a house and a farm, which we're not including in this, which is about $1 million. So we would sell that at some point, influx $1 million into the portfolio. I'm not showing that here because if we take that out of the scenario, it really helps you as the viewer apply this to your financial life, because he has a farm that we're going to be able to sell and influx that in. Not everybody has farms or cows or equipment that we can sell to put back into the plan. All right. So we're basically out at 98 years old. Okay, not too bad. Let's go back up here and see just some of the details. Now, the amount needed for Jerry to not run out of money today, $83,828. That means he needs $83,000 to influx into the plan, and he never runs out of money. I think we're doing pretty good with that. Rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall, 4.65. So in order for him to never run out of money, remember at retirement, we changed his rate of return to 4.4%. So the program is telling us we need to earn 4.65% for him to never run out of money. So we don't necessarily have to have this huge shift in our investments to never run out of money. All we have to do is earn an extra 0.2%. So 4.65 minus 4.40 is what? 2.25. So we need to have a 0.25% more in gain, and he never runs out of money. Again, I feel really good about this. So the first question is, retire at 55 with 1.6 million. Can I do that? Yes. Let's go to the second scenario. So the second scenario is Roth conversions. So we're going to look at this one right here. So this one would be, can I retire at 55 and do Roth conversions? So let's look at this. A lot of Jerry's information is going to stay the same, right? He's still 53 years old. We've got $120,000 in salary. That's $10,000 a month. We are going to retire February of 2024. That's 55 years old. We're going to take Social Security at 62. So we're still going to take Social Security early. We're not going to take it at 67. We're going to take it early. And the reason, again, we're taking it at 62 is because Jerry wants to get his money now. And that's just his perspective, and I can't change that. So that's what we're going to do. Assets are all staying the same. So we still have $1.4 million in assets. Now, what we've got to do, so right now, Jerry's got 47% of his money in IRAs, or in qualified money, meaning pre-tax. So when he dies, or when he gets old enough that he's required to take it out, or if he needs retirement income off this money, he's going to pay taxes at whatever rate he's at. Now, he's 53. By the time he gets to 63, 10 years from now, by the time he gets to 73, 20 years from now, odds are taxes are going to be higher. Odds are he's going to have to pay more taxes then than when he was retired. And I know people will tell me, oh, no, Drew, you won't pay more taxes in retirement. The current tax code is a very low and a very generous tax code. Just go back to the 1950s or 60s and look at tax codes then. We are going to have to pay down this national debt. And so we need to increase our taxes. So for Jerry, we need to increase our Roth money. He's got about 15% Roth money, and he's got about 33% non-qualified. So the 33% non-qualified is great. That's his freedom fund. But we need to increase his Roth IRA. So let me show you how we do that. Here's our assets. And what we're going to do is we're going to open up a Roth holding account. Now, the Roth holding account is going to be at TD Ameritrade. That's where his other assets are at, TD Ameritrade. And we're going to put money into this account. So it's at zero now. Now, the reason I'm not putting it into his current Roth IRA is because anytime you do a Roth conversion, there's a 5-year rule. And with a Roth conversion, which is different from a Roth contribution, every time you do a Roth conversion, there's a new 5-year rule on that money. And so you want to keep detailed records of each Roth conversion so you're not dipping into money too early that you converted. A lot of times what I tell clients is we'll open up multiple accounts to do our Roth conversions so that we do not screw it up, because I don't want to mess it up, okay? But for this example, we're just going to have one Roth holding account. So expenses stay the same. That's $4,000 a month. Let's go to cash flows. So here's what we got. We've got health insurance going out of $500 a month, and let's look at our Roth conversion. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a 5-year Roth conversion. It's going to be an annual conversion of $50,000. And we're going to start this February of 2023, and we're going to do it till February of 2028. So we're going to do 5 years of a Roth conversion. The software, we're going to skip a penalty on this just in case it somehow calculates in a 10% penalty for pulling money out of the IRA. That's why we have that clicked. You do not have a penalty when you move money from IRA to Roth IRA. It's called a Roth IRA conversion. I just did that for the software. you will have to pay taxes on the money. So anytime you do a Roth conversion, if you move money from your IRA to your Roth IRA, so in this example, it's $50,000, you will pay ordinary income taxes on that $50,000. So that's going to be added in to your taxes every year. So you want to be clear about where your taxes are at when you do a Roth conversion and you're not doing bracket jumping. So we'll go to the taxes on that and see what increases there as well. So here we go. We're going to take it out of his IRA and we're going to put it in the Roth holding account. So you can see that down here. You can see the $50,000 going in over the next 5 years. Okay? And you can see the destination account, the Roth holding account, what it'll be worth at year 2028. It's an extra $350,000 of tax-free Roth money. That seems pretty good to me. All right, so let's go to taxes. Now remember, his tax rate for the year 2023 was 14%. So by doing the Roth conversion, we've bumped it up 2% to 16.87, just a 2% increase in his projected federal rate. Now if we go to 2024, 14.9, remember it was about 11%, so now we're going to 14.9. And if we go to 2025, we're at 16.24. We're still pretty darn low when it comes to his projected federal tax rate. Yeah, we've increased his taxes in the short term, but over the long term, we're looking at bringing it down. It's the risk you want to take. Do you want to take the risk now while taxes are low to do the conversions, hoping that in the future, as taxes go up, you're going to have more tax-free money? Or do you want to take the risk of just sitting on your hands and saying, well, we'll just see? It's got to be personal. It also has to fit your plan, okay? So it fits for Jerry. So let's look at this. Let's go to retirement. Now, again, we're still out of money, 98, 99 years old. Now, you'll see when we go through the full scenario at the end that we actually increased his retirement income by 1 year from 98 to 99 by doing the conversion. And the reason it increased was because we got rid of a lot of taxes that he would have to pay if he left the money IRA. Isn't that wonderful? We've increased his retirement income by lowering his taxes. That's something you need to be looking at. Okay, so we start out with $1.5 million at 55, so a little less than if we didn't do the Roth conversions. We increase his lifetime, so we come down here, and you can see that we're out at 99 years old. And I'll show you the Roth conversions. Here they are, the transfers, boom, 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 boom. So at 60, remember we use that freedom fund for income between 55 and 59 and a half. But in his Roth IRA, we've got 317 in his TD Roth IRA. We have 366,000 in his Roth holding account. So what's that? 366, 334 plus 317,957. Now he has $685,000 in Roth money. So he's got $685,000 in Roth money. We've got $137,000, so $685 plus 137. So we basically have $823,000 of tax-free or tax-efficient money out of 1.4. That's pretty good. What is that? That's over half. That's pretty darn good. At 74 years old, he's got $76,000 in his IRA, $588,000 in his Roth IRA at TD Ameritrade, $36,000 in the bank, and $677,000 in his Roth holding account. At age 75, look at this, he's got $1.3 million of tax-free money. So from age 75 on, so what is that, year 2044? So let's go back to taxes. Let's go to year 2044, 14.39%, and it's all because of his taxable Social Security. Let's go to 2045, zero. And his Social Security is not taxed either. And why is his Social Security not taxed? Remember, you have to have earned income for Social Security to be taxed. So because all his money's Roth IRA, now his Social Security is not being taxed. So we've brought down the taxes on his Social Security. We've brought down the taxes on the federal level. At 75 years old, he has no taxes. That's pretty awesome. All right. But what happens if taxes go up? Let's look at that. So let's go to scenarios. So last scenario, 5-year Roth conversion, taxes go up. So now it's, can I retire at 55 with $1.5 million doing Roth conversions if taxes go up? All right. So again, we've got Jerry, his income, $120,000 a year. He's 53 years old. $10,000 a month is his salary. We're going to retire in February of 2024. And his main concern is, what happens if taxes go up? What happens? Now, all else being equal, we're still taking Social Security at 62. So that's $2,094 at 62. Our assets are still staying the same. Here's our Roth holding account. So we're going to do the Roth conversion into this account. We got $1.4 million currently. Let's go to our cash flows. So here's our Roth conversion. So remember, we're doing a Roth conversion of $50,000 from his IRA into the Roth holding account. So we're going to save and close this. It's going to be 5 years of $50,000. Here's the kicker though. Let's look at taxes. So right now, he's paying 16.87%, 2023. Let's increase the brackets. So let's say in the year 2026, because that's when the Trump tax code goes away, we have an increase in taxes. And let's do a 100% increase. Basically, the taxes double. So a 10% bracket currently goes to 20%, 12, 24. You can do this however you want. So we could do a 50% increase, 10 to 15, 12 to 18. This looks like more like the Obama era taxes, which if in 2025, Congress doesn't renew taxes, it goes back to the Obama era. This is probably more likely what that would look like. But let's just go to 100%. Let's say like Bernie Sanders gets in, okay? And I'm not being political. Taxes have to go up. We got to pay for our social obligations. So we'll save this. Now, in the year 2026, look at that projected federal tax rate, 35%. But that's because we're doing Roth conversions. Now, we have to ask ourselves, does it still make sense to do that? I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense at that point. And that's something we're going to have to do reviews on every year. We go to retirement. Now we're out of money at 91. So because we increased taxes and we did the Roth conversions, now we're running out of money about 7 years early. Doesn't make sense. It might hurt. We might not want to do that. All right, so let's look at the final scenario with all this. So step 1, retire at 55, no Roth conversions. Step 2, 5-year Roth conversion. Remember, taxes staying the same for the first 2 scenarios. And scenario number 3, 5-year Roth conversion and taxes go up. So total assets, $1.4 million. That's our total assets on all of those, 1.4 and 1.4. Our net worth, 1.4, 1.14, 1.4. But here's what I want you to look at. Let's look at lifetime taxation. So if we do nothing, we retire at 55, we don't do any Roth conversions, our lifetime taxation is $704,935. Okay, that's dying at 98. Okay, $704,000. If we do the 5-year Roth conversions and taxes don't go up as much as we looked at, our lifetime taxation is $408,111. That's a $300,000 difference. That's enough difference to start doing the process now before taxes change, and then reassessing every year to see where taxes go, okay? Finally, 5-year Roth conversion, if taxes go up in the year 2026, $605,000 lifetime taxation, and that's actually running out of money at 91 years old. So when we look at this, first off, based on these 2 scenarios, it definitely makes sense to do the Roth conversions, even if it hurts up front to pay the taxes, because over time it's a $300,000 savings. And if taxes do go up, we just need to reassess where we're at when we're doing the conversions, okay? I hope this long video has helped in your retirement scenario. If you want to contact me, all the information is below. Thank you for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. Can I retire at 55 with $1.1 million saved for retirement? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel, we're going to go through each individual section of a Your Financial EKG, of a detailed financial plan, so you can see, can I retire at 55 with $1.1 million saved for retirement? I want you to take this information, put it to your own retirement plan, and ask yourself the same question. Can I retire at such and such age with such and such saved for retirement? Or are there things that I need to think about, I need to add to, I need to subtract from in my retirement planning? All right, you ready? Let's get to it. Now, here's what we've got. We got Wilson and Nancy Martin. They're both 55 years old, and they're going to retire here in a few months. And they contacted me. They're from the great state of California, and they asked, hey, we're 55. We've saved $1.1 million. Can we retire? Now, their current salaries, $99,000, right at $100,000 for Wilson, and Nancy makes right about $200,000. So they've got about $300,000 in working income right now. So if we go through the plan and it doesn't work, or some adjustments need to be made, we still have $300,000 in income that we're working for, that we can continue to add to our retirement accounts, add to our wealth if we need to do that. Now, from a Social Security standpoint, Nancy wants to take Social Security at 67. At 67, her Social Security would be $3,519. Now, Wilson wants to take Social Security at 62, which would be $2,074. Now, keep in mind, if you take Social Security early, if you take Social Security at 62, you're only going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. If you wait to 67, you're going to get 100% of your full retirement benefit. And if you wait till 70, if you're an overachiever, a broccoli eater, you would get 124% of your full retirement benefit. Now, the reason that Wilson wants to wait till 62, or actually wants to take Social Security early, is because of his health. His health has been very poor over the last few years. And so in his mind, he's thinking, I want to get my money as soon as possible. But that might not be the best decision depending on their financial plan. We need to go through this and look at that in each individual situation. Now, for him, it might be a good idea with his health, but we also want to try to maximize Nancy's Social Security in the event that we lose Wilson. As you can see, Wilson's Social Security is $2,074. That's 70% of his full retirement benefit. If we add an extra 30% in there, that's only going to take his Social Security to $2,700. So even at 67, Wilson's Social Security is still going to be less than Nancy's. So it might not make sense to try to maximize his. It actually would make more sense to maximize Nancy's. Try to push her Social Security to 70. Because if she waited till 70, so she's getting $3,519. $3,519 at 67. If we wait till 70, that's an extra 24% or added on. So that would be $4,363 is what she would get at 70 with COLA adjustments if she waited. And so if Wilson's health is poor, maybe we need to try to maximize Nancy's under the assumption that Wilson might not be with us for the entirety of their retirement. Okay? Now, obviously, we don't know what the next day brings, but we want to do our due diligence and our planning. Now, from a pension standpoint, Nancy gets a pension at 65, so about 10 years from now, of $1,322, and that does have a 3% COLA increase as well as 100% survivor benefit, meaning if Nancy passes away, Wilson would get her pension, right? He would get 100% of $1,322 adjusted for inflation. Wilson has a pension at 65. It's $500 a month. It has no COLA increase and no survivor's benefits. So there's no increase to that $500, and there's not going to be any survivor's benefits when he passes away. Again, it's really important that we maximize their Social Securities in this situation, and we make sure they're not going to run out of retirement income. because of Wilson's poor health. All right, so let's look at assets. Now, from an asset standpoint, Wilson in his current 401k has $208,000 saved in his 401k. In a joint account at their bank, they've got about $250,000 in cash. And so when we're going to go through their retirement plan and their retirement investing, we might talk about repurposing some of that cash to get them a better rate of return. Now, keep in mind, high yield savings accounts right now, CDs, you might be able to get 3 and 4%. But do we need to have that amount of cash in the bank? One of the questions I always ask people when I see that is, why is there such a large amount of cash sitting in your bank? And they might say, well, I just feel comfortable with that amount in savings, or we sold a property and we just didn't know what to do with it, or we're just scared to invest it. We don't know what to do. And so as a financial advisor, when we're doing the EKGs, when we're doing the financial plan, my job is to say, hey, I understand that you're concerned about where the market is. I understand you don't want to lose this money. That's why you have it in the bank. You want it safe and secure. Can we invest that? Maybe we invest it really conservative, get you a very low rate of return, but do something better than you're doing in the bank. And let me show you how that's going to impact your retirement plan, how that's going to be better than just leaving it in the bank. Now, Wilson does have an old 401k with $193,000 in it, and Nancy has a 403b with $480,000 in it. Now, they're both contributing to their 401k and their 403b. Obviously, they're going to retire here soon, so those contributions are going to go away. But until then, they're contributing $3,000 and $2,500 respectively into their assets. Now, they have a home. That would be a protected asset. It's worth about $1.9 million, and it's paid off. Now, they live in San Francisco, and so a lot of their equity, a lot of their savings has gone to their house, and that's why you see such a large asset there compared to retirement savings, because they live in an area where home values are priced so high. So we look at this and we say, okay, this is a benefit to you. You've got a house that's worth $1.9 million. And as we go through this plan, you're going to see what I'm talking about with this. Do we want to keep this house, or can we use some of this cash for your plan? Or do you want to stay here for the rest of your life? So that's an option, and it's actually a really good benefit for them. Now, you can do the same thing. Maybe you have a house that's paid off and it's worth $300,000 or $500,000 or even $800,000, whatever it might be, wherever part of the country you are. Think about the ways that the questions that you want to ask yourself are, one, am I going to stay here for the rest of my retirement? Could I downsize and use some of this equity as an influx of capital into my retirement plan, into my retirement income to help elongate my retirement assets? I've got a client who sold his house and moved into an apartment so he could use the assets for retirement income. And that was his plan. Your plan's going to be different. So we want to look through that. We want to work through each individual scenario. Now, they've got about $1.1 million right now, of which 22% is in the bank. That's the $250,000. 77 or 78%, which is $882, is invested. So if we look at their net worth, we've got spendable assets of $1.1 million. We have protected assets of $1.9 million. So we've got a total net worth of $3,032,000. Now, before you turn it on and say, oh, they got $3 million, they're going to be fine, keep in mind they're in California. They're in a high-cost state. So you might be watching this in Idaho, you might be watching this in Montana or Kentucky or Tennessee and thinking, well, I don't need that much. I mean, if I had $3 million, I'd live like a king. You want to kind of look at this in the perspective of where you're at in the country. So for them, $3 million, living in San Francisco is not like living like a king, right? So we still need to put the same due diligence into their retirement plan as we would if they had $1 million in Knoxville, Tennessee, all right? Now, portfolio weighted average, we're going to look at 6% as our rate of return for the money that's in the market. So the money that's staying invested, the 401k, the 403b, which will eventually roll out into IRAs, those are going to earn 6% on a projected level. Now, keep in mind, we have to look at market norms or historical returns. So we're going to take this plan and we're going to say, what would it have done if it was the year 2000? What would this financial plan do if it was the year 1968 or 1975 or whenever? Because we want to see what this plan would do if the market and history maybe doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme a little bit, right? It kind of looks like it did when this happened. So we go, okay, this is what your portfolio would look like. Because keep in mind, over the next 30 years, you're going to face at least 5 recessions. So if you retire today or you retire 10 years from now, you're going to face at least 5 recessions. And out of those 5 recessions, you're going to face at least 2 to 3 stock market crashes. That means 20, 30, 40% loss in your retirement investing accounts. And so you've got to look at your retirement plan and you need to factor those in. It can't be all rainbows and unicorns and fairy dust and say, okay, I'm going to earn 4, 5, 6% for the rest of my life. No, it's going to be a roller coaster, especially if you stay invested in the stock market. And I'm not against the stock market because you've got to earn a rate of return to take out retirement income to last throughout the rest of your life. Interest rates aren't high enough for you to put all the money in the bank and just earn interest from a CD or from a federal credit union or whatever. And so when we're investing in the market, we've got to have a projected return, which we're going to put as 6%, but we also have to look back at what the market has done and take a realistic approach to that and say, okay, if we have a year 2000 to 2003, like a sequence of return risk situation, what am I going to do? How am I going to invest? And emotionally, how am I going to react, right? Quantitative, what are we going to do? Qualitative, how are we going to react? All right. The house, we're going to give a 1% increase on that for as long as we stay in there. So when we look at this portfolio as a whole, we've got a 4.68 portfolio weighted average because $250,000 sitting in the bank earning nothing. So we're going to probably want to increase that, and I'll show you what we're going to do here once we get into some recommendations. Now, from an expense standpoint, their expenses are $5,000 a month, which is pretty low for where they live. The reason for that is they're very frugal. They don't do a whole lot of extra stuff. The house has been paid off, so $5,000 is kind of the base. The kids are gone. We're taking property taxes out of other cash flows and things like that. So this is just kind of bare bones expenses. I'm going to show you some of the things that they want to do coming up next. Now, from an inflation standpoint, we are going to stay at 3.24%. So these expenses are going to get an inflation rate of 3.24% forever, okay? Now, cash flows. This is the big cash flow for them. They want to do overseas travel. They have family that lives in another country, and they want to spend 6 months over there, and they want to spend 6 months here. So they want to go over there when the weather's nice, and then come back to California when the weather's nice here. Isn't that the perfect scenario that we want to do? So they want to do overseas travel, and they want to start that pretty much right away, and we're going to take $20,000 a year with inflation. So I'll show you this. Look. We're going to take an annual distribution of $20,000. We're going to give a 3% inflation rate, and we're going to do that for the next 20 years. So from 55 to 65 and 65 to 75. And the reason you want to put inflation on your travel, okay, is because $20,000 today might get you to Paris, France. But $20,000 20 years from now might just get you to Paris, Texas. And so we want to put inflation on our travel to know, is this going to be sustainable? Are these withdrawals, not just our retirement income, like what we need to live and breathe, but is our travel, is our goals and dreams sustainable within the current environment? And I'm not putting 8 and 9% inflation. I'm just using 3.24% because that's the 108-year average. It's probably going to be higher over the next decade, but if you look at over a 30 and 40-year scale, it'll probably come back down to the mean, which is about 3.24%. Now, taxes are a big deal. Keep in mind, they're in California. So your state tax is high. Your federal tax is probably going to be a little higher because of national debts, and we've got to pay for Social Security, and we've got Medicare to fund, and we've got all these different social programs. And again, I'm not against them. I'm just saying we've got to fund a lot of stuff as a government. So where the taxes are at today, it's probably not going to be like that for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So they're already in a high tax state, which you've got to start thinking about. Do I want to stay in this state and pay these state taxes, or do I want to move to a lower cost state and what is the federal taxes going to look like over time, right? So we want to always look at that. So if we look at, let's say like 2030, you know, their projected federal rate is still really low. Keep in mind, I'm projecting out taxes to 2030. The Trump tax code expires in 2025. So the legislation at that time is going to have to put together a new tax code, or it reverts back to the Obama era tax code, which again is not terrible. But software can't project political risk. You know, within the market, you have market risk, you've got national risk like foreign crises and wars, and you have political risk. Like, I don't know what legislators are thinking. Who does? And so I can project to 2025 because I know where the taxes are going to be at least till then, but I don't know after that. So we have to make our best guess, which again, we've got a national debt that's high. We have Social Security and Medicare that needs to be funded. We have some other programs that need to be funded. So taxes are probably going to have to go up. So for them, you know, our state tax is going to already be at the top, but we also want to look at trying to bring this down because their income right now is falling between $22,000 and $89,900. Their gross income's at $106,000, but this is showing a deduction of $27,000 married filing jointly. That's the deduction, the standard deduction right now. It's probably not going to be there. If you think about when the Obama era taxes were, which were right before Trump's tax change, the standard deduction was at 12. Okay, so take that 27,000 down to 12. Let's just do the math real quick. Let me show you this. 106,068. That would be our gross income. Let's take a 12.5 standard deduction. So instead of 78,368, we're actually at 93,568. Okay? So now you're looking at 93,000. That's putting us over the 12% into the 22% bracket based on the Trump era tax return or the Trump era tax code. So you've really, really got to be diligent about your tax planning. Okay? So pre-retirement, really, we've just got a few months left before we're going to have about $1.1 million saved for retirement. So let's go to retirement. And so we look at this and we can already see a shortfall. At 90 years old, they're going to run out of money. It's going to be at zero. The amount needed today to avoid a shortfall, they need an influx of about $118,000 into their plan today to never run out of money. Now, I don't like to get down to the penny with running out at 100 because there's things like long-term care, assisted living. You know, here in Florida, we have hurricanes and natural disasters. You want to have some, some flux there. But for them, remember, we've got a $1.9 million home. If we sell that and move to a lower cost area of California, can we influx $500,000 into this plan? And that's going to take care of it. It's a question. It's a personal question. You have to be asking yourself, your spouse, your partner, your significant other, whoever, what are we going to do when we retire? What are we going to do with this house? You know, I live in a house that's got 3 bedrooms because we have multiple kids. Well, do we need all that when we get to retirement if the kids are gone? Maybe, maybe not. It does. You never know. So you got to start thinking about those questions. Now, the rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall, this is where we're going to hang out for a minute, is 6.24%. Now, what that means is this portfolio needs to earn 6.25% for them to never run out of money. So that means we need either a 6.25% rate of return on the money that's already invested, so not the bank account, but the 401ks, the 403bs, or we need to take some money out of the bank and we need to get that invested and we need to bring up that rate of return. So that's where I want to start first, because you can see here's the travel coming out. Here's our Social Security for Wilson kicking on because he wants to start Social Security early. Then we've got Social Security for both of them kicking on here, all right, because Nancy's Social Security kicks in, Wilson's already on Social Security, and then we still have the travel for 20 years, and then we stop it at 76, and then basically we're out of money at 90. Again, not a bad plan, right? Mortality is at 84 and 86, male and female. 90 is pretty good, but can it be better? Do we want it to be better? Sure we do. We want to have some flux, some gap. But look at this too. Look at their house. At 90, they got a $2.7 million house, just earning 1%. So again, there's a lot of things that could be done at this point. We could talk about reverse mortgages. We could talk about selling the house, especially if they're going to move into maybe say an independent care facility. I've got a lot of clients now that move into these independent care facilities where you go in as independent, like you're doing what you want to do. It's like an apartment. You're doing what you want to do, but as your health declines, you go from independent to assisted to long-term care to then, passing away. And so they've got the option for that. But what if they don't want to do that? What if they want to leave that house as an inheritance to the children? Because right now, from a tax standpoint, if you leave your house to your kids, the cost basis on your death goes to them and they're able to sell that house. So what if they want to do that? Well, we need to readjust and look at some other options. All right, let's look at the assets, because that's where we've got about $250,000 sitting in the bank earning zero. So we need at least 6 1/4 to not run out of money. So what if we repurpose some of that cash? So let's look at that. So now we have $100,000 in the bank and we're going to repurpose $150,000 into a taxable brokerage account. But remember, the money that's in the bank, they want to keep conservative. So the money that we put in the taxable brokerage account needs to be conservative as well, because that's how they feel. Like, I don't want to push risk onto anybody. That's not my job. My job is to help people invest based on their risk tolerances and to give them recommendation. I might say, hey, you need to be a little bit more aggressive. You're 35 and you're investing like you're 60. But if you're 55 and going into retirement, every little penny counts. And so your risk capacity, meaning the ability for the portfolio to give you income and not deplete itself, and your risk tolerance, meaning how you feel about risk, they really need to mesh, okay? So we're gonna put $150,000 into the taxable brokerage account. We're also gonna give it a rate of return of 4%. Now, the reason we're using 4% because that's really conservative. Remember, I use 6% as a rate of return because that is 2% behind the market's historical average. The market has historically averaged 8%. That means you're correlated to the S&P 500, okay? So if you are younger, if you're watching this and you're in your 30s and 40s, you want to try to be correlated as closely as possible to the S&P 500, getting 8, 9, 10%, whatever the S&P is getting for that year. Could be negative 8, 9, 10%, right? Once you step into retirement, once you start to shift, because there's this shift where you go from accumulation to preservation and distribution. In their case, they're shifting their assets from growth and accumulation to now we're living off this money. It's about preservation and distribution, income. And so we're going to bring the projected rate of return down to 6%, and the money in the bank, we're going to put at 4%. And the reason we're doing that is because it's not about the money you make in retirement, but it's about the money you keep in retirement. And that is the most important thing. All right. So now let's go over to retirement. Remember, we needed 6 1/4 and they were out at 90. So if we add in $150,000, now we're out at 91, okay? What's our rate of return gonna be here? 6.36. So we still need a really good rate of return. We've got an extra year of income, okay? So we've got ourselves an extra year of income, but we still haven't got this money to 100. So what's something we can do? Obviously, we talked about reverse mortgages already. We talked about selling the house. Well, I can't project a reverse mortgage in this software, so let's sell the house. So let's go to 80. So at 80 years old, they'd have a home worth $2.4 million and about $312,000 in spendable assets. So what we need to do is we need to sell this house. We need to move into something else. We need to take the equity from this house and repurpose it into the plan. Now, I don't know what the real estate market's going to look like in 2048. Okay, I cannot tell you, but what we can do is we can do an assumption. So let's take $1.5 million and buy a house with it. So where's 2.4 million? 2,463. Let's subtract out $1.5 million because we're talking about California. So that leaves us $963,000. So let's take $900,000 as a round number in the year 2048. So we go to cash flows. We go to, let's add in, sell the house. We're going to do an annual one, so a one-time of $900,000. We're going to sell it in June of 2048. Okay? It's going to come from a taxable external source, and it's going to go into our cash flow account, which is just basically a taxable brokerage account. So we're going to save that. Let's go back to our retirement picture. And now look at this. At 100, we've got $442,000, and our projected rate of return is adequate. So let me show you what we did there. At 80, we influxed that $900,000. We sold the house, so it's not really worth $2.4 million now. It's worth $1.5 million. And what I would normally do within the financial EKG is I would create a new scenario. I'd copy this information, but I would create a new scenario that says sold home. We'd put the new value of the home in there, and we'd influx the cash. But because this is a YouTube video, I want to make it simple for you to watch. So the house is really worth 1.5 at this point. We've influxed 900,000, and boom, there we go. So then now let's go back to cash flows. And let's see if we decide let's not do 900,000, because that might be, let's just say we influx 500,000. Remember, it's 2.4 is what the house is worth. We still got to buy a house in California. It's a high real estate market right there in San Francisco. So let's just do 500,000. We net 500,000 from selling and buying, selling, moving, all that. What does that do for us? Still, we run out at 100 with $29,000. So even then, we can still sell our house we can buy a house for more, right? Have less equity to influx into the portfolio, and we're still doing okay. Now, let's go back to, let's take out selling the house, because we need to take that out of the plan, all right? And let's go to market. Let's look at what this would do based on some market projections. So here's our projection over here, okay, earning the 5.2 and the 6% rate of return. And then this is the market comparison. And so what I want to do is look at some historical averages. I want to say what would happen if we had the year 2000. So in the year 2000, we had a unique situation where in 2000, 2001, and 2002, the market went down for 3 straight years. That's called sequence of return risk. Sequence of return risk is the biggest risk to your retirement. And that risk is this. You step into retirement and immediately, or in the short term, the market falls 10, 20, or 30%. And you're using your retirement investments for income. And so you're taking money out of an investment that's going down. And then the next year, the market does the same thing. And you're taking income out of your investments and the market's going down and you haven't got the Social Security yet, or you might not have a pension. And so what that does is that turns your retirement investing accounts into a depreciating asset. So we got to have a plan for sequence of return risk. So we look at this for them and we say, hey, this is the worst thing that could happen. The lost decade, the worst decade we've had in like 100 years. If this happens, you're out of money in 10 years. Right? We need to have a plan for that. We need to have a plan if this were to happen. Now let's go to 1968. I've been using 1968 a lot because that really kind of mirrors where we're at today. We're in this slow recessionary environment with inflation that's up. And really it took from about 1968 to 1982 to kind of calm inflation. Volcker had to put the pedal to the metal and raise interest rates, and that really brought inflation down. Can we do that right now? I don't know. So let's look at what happened over that 14-year period and compare that to our portfolio. So if we look from 1968 on, now we're out of money at 69. So when we start putting some historical perspectives on this money, we run into some interesting situations. And so as an advisor, I might be looking at this and having a conversation like, hey guys, we've really got to be delicate about this. Maybe you are retiring a little early. Maybe we don't need to spend $20,000 every year for 20 years for travel overseas. Maybe you do it every other year. Are there some things that we can adjust? And there are, and we're going to go through that with them. But you need to be thinking about that for your financial plan, which is why you need a financial EKG. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, all the information is in the description below. Hey, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you. God bless. Bye-bye.